Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever witnessed a courtroom so chaotic that it felt less like justice being served and more like the grand finale of a reality TV meltdown? Because that's exactly what unfolded when Asian Doll stormed into Lil Durk's hearing, unleashing a chain reaction so outrageous that King Von's name echoed through the chambers like a ghost refusing to rest. Imagine the scene. The hushed silence of the judge's bench, shattered by a voice dripping with betrayal. Durk's composure cracking in front of flashing cameras, and the crowd gasping as secrets nobody was supposed to hear came spilling out in real time. Was this a legal proceeding, or was it an episode of Love and Hip Hop with a plotline too insane to script? Think about it. Why would Asian Doll choose this moment, this exact day, to barge into a courtroom already teetering on scandal? And why, when her voice cut through the tension, did Durk collapse into tears, calling out King Von's name as if the man himself had just walked in from the grave? Coincidence or calculated sabotage? Insiders are whispering about a hidden agenda, a conspiracy tied to money, loyalty, and the one name that still divides the streets, Von. So buckle up, because what happened next isn't just shocking. It's the kind of scandal that makes you question if the courtroom walls could talk. They beg for silence. The courtroom was supposed to be the one place where silence carried more weight than words. But on this particular day, silence was the first casualty. The moment Asian Doll pushed open those heavy wooden doors, it wasn't just an interruption, it was a declaration. The cameras, which had been lazily pointed toward the defense table, suddenly snapped to attention like they had been waiting their entire career for this scene. Lil Durk, usually calm with that practiced poker face he's perfected through years of dodging accusations, looked like he'd seen a ghost. And maybe he had, because the first word out of his mouth wasn't a denial, wasn't a lawyer's instruction, wasn't even an explanation. It was a name. Von. Now let's pause right there. Because you can't just scream Von in the middle of a federal courtroom without people clutching their pearls. The judge nearly dropped his gavel. The jury whispered among themselves like a high school cafeteria rumor had just exploded. And outside those walls, the streets lit up with theories. Why Von's name? Why now? And most importantly, what did Asian Doll know that Durk didn't want revealed? For years, fans have painted Asian Doll as Von's eternal voice, his chosen heir to keep his memory alive. But let's be honest, she's also thrived off the attention, spinning every Instagram live, every tearful post, every cryptic lyric into a badge of honor. Critics have called it exploitation. Supporters call it loyalty. But walking into that courtroom uninvited, that wasn't loyalty. That was a move straight out of the scandal playbook. And the streets knew it. Anonymous insiders claim she had been planning this stunt for weeks. One alleged text message exchange, leaked conveniently to a fan page, showed her promising to make Durk fold where it matters most. Fold? In front of the law? In front of Von's legacy? Imagine that. If true, this wasn't just a woman grieving a lost love. This was someone setting up the kind of spectacle you'd expect to see on a VH1 reunion special. Not in a federal case with lives, freedom, and millions of dollars hanging in the balance. Durk's breakdown wasn't just about her presence. It was about the timing. Just minutes before, his lawyer had whispered something about potential release negotiations, a phrase vague enough to mean hope for freedom, but loaded enough to remind him that the clock was ticking. And then boom, Asian Doll walks in, looking like the walking embodiment of Von's ghost, ready to spill whatever secrets she had buried. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. It was the kind of entrance you couldn't write into a script without people calling it unrealistic. And the theatrics? Oh, they were unmatched. She didn't just walk in quietly. No, witnesses describe her stilettos clapping against the marble floor, like a drum roll leading to the big reveal. Her voice carried above the lawyers, the clerks, even the judge himself. "Tell them the truth, Durk," she reportedly shouted. The truth about what? Nobody knew. But in that moment, the courtroom transformed into a stage, and Durk was no longer the defendant, he was the accused in a trial of loyalty, betrayal, and memory. Social media exploded within seconds. Clips went viral before the bailiff even asked for order. One tweet read, "Asian doll just hijacked a courtroom like it was a versus battle. Von's name still haunting Durk. This is insane." Another claimed, "Durk finally broke. Von's ghost too heavy to carry." Asian doll said what everyone was scared to say. The hashtags #FreeDurk, #VonLives, and #AsianDollChaos trended simultaneously, creating a digital storm that blurred the line between legal reality and entertainment spectacle. But here's the kicker. There's a rumor that what she had planned to expose wasn't just emotional. Some sources suggest she had actual receipts. We're talking leaked messages, photos, even a supposed voice note where Von allegedly warned her about never trusting Durk when money and power are on the line. True? Fake? Nobody can say for sure. But when you've got tens of thousands of fans screenshotting, sharing, and stitching the story into TikToks, the truth doesn't even matter anymore. Perception becomes reality, and Durk was drowning in it. Let's not forget, this isn't the first time the triangle of Durk, Von, and Asian doll has made headlines. After Von's tragic death, conspiracy theories ran rampant. Some whispered that Durk didn't do enough to protect his so-called brother. Others claimed Asian doll knew secrets about that night she never shared. And every time she hinted at telling it all, social media would go into meltdown mode, begging her to spill. But she never did. Not fully. Until now, or at least, until she gave the impression she might. And in the world of viral scandals, impression is everything. Durk's tears weren't just about grief. They were about power slipping through his hands. For years, he's balanced the image of a hardened street survivor with the polish of a mainstream rap star. Courts, charges, cases. He's danced around them all with that sly smile and hit records to distract from the drama. But a public breakdown? That's a crack in the armor. A weakness. And in a courtroom, weakness is blood in the water. Prosecutors notice. Juries notice. And you better believe the headlines noticed. Asian doll's presence raised another question nobody wanted to touch. Was she acting alone? Or was there a bigger machine behind this chaos? Some allege industry rivals encouraged her, whispering promises of spotlight and sympathy if she turned the courtroom into a circus. Others think it was personal revenge, a way to remind the world that while Durk still breathes, Von's shadow looms larger. Either way, this stunt worked. Because for the first time, Durk's future wasn't just in the hands of the judge, it was in the court of public opinion. And the jury of social media is notoriously unforgiving. And here's the real twist. Reports claim the judge called a recess not because of legal disruption, but because he himself was rattled. Imagine that. A federal judge shaken by the mention of King Von, as though even the law couldn't escape the pull of his name. That's how deep this story runs. Von's influence didn't die with him, it became a haunting, a narrative thread that refuses to be cut, no matter how much Durk tries to move on. So when Durk shouted Von, with tears streaming down his face, it wasn't just an emotional slip. It was a confession of guilt, of loyalty, of fear, depending on who you ask. To some, it proved he still carries the weight of Von's death on his shoulders. To others, it was proof that Asian doll had struck a nerve so deep that even his carefully constructed mask couldn't survive it. Either way, that one word became the headline. And once it left his lips, there was no putting it back. The audience didn't leave the courtroom with legal updates. They left with a story. A story of betrayal, love, legacy, and collapse. A story that blurred the lines between justice and theater. And a story that, whether Durk liked it or not, would follow him forever. And just when the room thought the chaos had reached its peak, Asian doll leaned forward, locked eyes with Durk, and whispered something nobody could hear clearly. But the effect? It was immediate. His body slumped further, his face buried in his hands, and the camera zoomed in like vultures circling prey. Whatever she said wasn't for the public, it was for him. But the silence it left behind screamed louder than anything else. Which leads us here, on the edge of the real breakdown, where secrets are seconds from spilling and reputations hang by a thread. Because if that was just the entrance, what comes next is the explosion nobody's ready for. The explosion nobody was ready for didn't come from a gavel, a lawyer, or even the judge. It came from the simple sound of Asian Doll's voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "You can't run from Von Durk. Not here, not anywhere." That one sentence shifted the energy of the entire courtroom. Suddenly, this wasn't about legal arguments, evidence, or technicalities. It was about ghosts, loyalty, and a love triangle that refused to die. Witnesses swear Durk's entire body froze. His shoulders hunched, his breathing heavy, his eyes red as if he was reliving every rumor, every whisper, every accusation tied to Von's death. Cameras zoomed in mercilessly, capturing each twitch of his face like it was Oscar-winning drama. Prosecutors smirked quietly, sensing the breakdown they couldn't achieve with cross-examination was happening all on its own, delivered gift wrapped by Asian Doll. And here's where it gets twisted. An anonymous source close to the defense team leaked a supposed transcript of what Asian Doll had prepared. Allegedly, she came armed with receipts, screenshots of old group chats between herself, Von, and Durk. In those alleged messages, Von supposedly warned her, "Don't ever let Durk talk you out of telling the truth if I'm gone. He plays for himself, not for us, whether real or fabricated." The very idea that such words existed was enough to send social media spiraling. Fans began dissecting every emoji, every typo, every timestamp in the so-called leaks like they were decoding national secrets. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, the chaos grew unbearable. The judge ordered a recess, but the crowd refused to leave. Spectators whispered like they were in church, half shocked, half entertained, completely addicted to the unfolding drama. Court reporters admitted later they had stopped taking notes on the legal proceedings. They were too busy live-tweeting the scandal. Even the bailiffs couldn't contain the circus. Their attempts at order only added to the spectacle, as though they were stagehands fumbling behind the curtain of a theater show gone wrong. Outside, the reactions were pure madness. Fans of King Von rallied behind Asian Doll, declaring her the true voice of the fallen king. Memes flooded Twitter showing Durk collapsing with captions like, "When the ghost of Von pulls up uninvited." TikTok edits emerged within hours, syncing Asian Doll's courtroom entrance with dramatic soundtracks from horror movies and reality TV theme songs. And Durk supporters? They scrambled to spin the narrative, claiming Asian Doll was exploiting grief for clout, accusing her of disrespecting the legal process, and even suggesting she had been paid off by rival industry forces to sabotage Durk's case. But let's not pretend this is just about one dramatic interruption. This was the culmination of years of whispered tension. Remember, after Von's death, Asian Doll practically branded herself as his widow, despite the complicated reality of their relationship. She wore his name like armor, speaking about him as if she alone knew the real story. Durk, on the other hand, positioned himself as Von's brother, carrying his legacy in music, concerts, and public statements. But the streets never forgot the unanswered questions. Why wasn't Von better protected that night? Who dropped the ball? And did loyalty take a backseat to fame? Now imagine those questions resurfacing inside a courtroom where Durk's own freedom was on the line. That wasn't coincidence, that was calculated sabotage. Or at least, that's what some are whispering. Industry gossip blogs claim Asian Doll had been in contact with prosecutors before the hearing, offering to testify if needed. Was she there under her own will? Or was she nudged by powers that wanted Durk rattled? Theories run wild. Some say government officials knew exactly what would happen if she showed up. They wanted to test Durk's breaking point. Others believe rival rappers, still bitter about his rise to power, orchestrated the stunt from behind the scenes. The wildest theory? That Asian doll wasn't just speaking for herself, she was delivering Von's unfinished message. Fans swear by stories of her spiritual claims, saying she felt Von's presence, guiding her to that courtroom, demanding that his truth finally be told. Ridiculous? Maybe. But in a culture where legends never die, the idea that Von was haunting that space wasn't far-fetched for his loyal followers. Durk's collapse became more than just a moment of weakness. It became a symbol. To his critics, it was the mask slipping, the gangster rapper finally cracking under the weight of guilt and secrets. To his fans, it was proof of how much he loved Von, how deep the scars ran, how human he truly was beneath the fame. Either way, nobody walked out of that courtroom believing Durk was untouchable anymore. The image of the unstoppable OTF leader had been replaced by a man broken down by ghosts of loyalty and betrayal. Then came the whispers about money. Supposed leaked bank records surfaced online hours later, conveniently posted by anonymous accounts. These so-called documents claimed Von's estate had disputes with Durk's business empire, alleging millions owed from royalties, shows, and unreleased tracks. Were these leaks real? Probably not. But in the court of public opinion, perception always outweighs fact. And with Asian Doll fueling the fire, the streets were convinced. Durk's tears weren't just about grief. They were about guilt over millions unaccounted for. Public backlash grew so loud that mainstream media outlets, who had largely ignored the case, suddenly jumped in. Headlines screamed, "Courtroom chaos, rapper Lil Durk breaks down as Asian Doll confronts him over King Von." Talk shows debated whether Asian Doll's entrance was an act of bravery or exploitation. Pundits who couldn't name a single Durk song suddenly acted like experts on OTF history. And fans? They devoured every second of it, flooding comment sections with conspiracy theories, demands for justice for Von, and calls to cancel whoever they decided was guilty that hour. What nobody expected, however, was the ripple effect on the industry itself. Promoters reportedly pulled back from booking Durk for shows, afraid his name was now too toxic. Brand deals froze, unsure of which way public opinion would swing. Even fellow rappers stayed suspiciously quiet, some dropping cryptic bars on Instagram stories, others choosing silence rather than picking sides in a war that threatened to consume everyone connected to Von's name. Inside Durk's camp, leaks painted a picture of panic. Anonymous insiders described late-night phone calls, frantic meetings, and fears that the trial wasn't just about legal freedom, it was about the collapse of an empire. He thought he was fighting one case, one alleged associate said, but now he's fighting Von's ghost, Asian Doll's mouth, and the entire internet. Nobody can win that. And just when the dust began to settle, Asian Doll pulled out her final card for the day. Walking out of the courtroom, reporters swarmed her, demanding answers. She didn't give a speech, didn't clarify her intentions. She just smirked and said, "Ask Durk, he knows." Then she stepped into a black SUV and vanished, leaving the world hungrier for answers than ever. That smirk became the meme of the week. To some, it was the look of someone who had won. To others, it was proof she was playing games. But either way, the image stuck. Asian Doll, draped in Von's shadow, walking away as Durk crumbled behind her. The aftermath was never going to be quiet. Not when Asian Doll had just lit the fuse in a federal courtroom. Not when Lil Durk had collapsed in front of cameras. And certainly not when King Von's name had been resurrected like a spirit refusing to rest. If part 1 was the shock and part 2 was the exposure, part 3 was the explosion that nobody could contain. Within hours, government officials allegedly stepped in to review the courtroom disruption. But insiders claim there was more to it than just security. Rumors swirled that investigators were suddenly digging deeper into Durk's financial dealings, particularly any connection to Von's estate. Some speculated that Asian Doll's dramatic entrance wasn't random at all, it was a trigger, designed to force the system's hand. Was she an unknowing pawn, or had she aligned herself with forces far bigger than street loyalty? Nobody could say for certain, but the timing was too precise to ignore. And then came the resignations. Not from Durk's team, but from those orbiting him. One promoter allegedly pulled out of a multi-million-dollar tour deal, citing image concerns. A fashion brand quietly scrubbed his name from an upcoming campaign. Even a streaming platform reportedly paused its promotion of his latest single, afraid that being tied to him meant inheriting the ghost of Von's controversy. In the cutthroat world of music business, loyalty lasts only as long as the money flows. And Durk's flood was suddenly looking like a drought. Meanwhile, Asian Doll basked in the spotlight. Every blog post, every talk show, every viral tweet put her front and center as the woman who dared to crash a courtroom and break a superstar down to tears. She didn't confirm, didn't deny, just teased. On Instagram Live, she smirked at the camera and said, "Y'all saw what happened. Imagine what I didn't say." That one sentence was enough to set the internet ablaze again. Fans demanded she release the alleged receipts. Detractors accused her of milking the moment. But everyone kept watching. And that, in the end, is what mattered most. Durk, on the other hand, seemed trapped. Every move he made was under a microscope. A single tweet of him writing OTF4L was dissected like it was a coded message. Every public appearance was replayed frame by frame to see if he looked broken, angry, guilty, or all of the above. And in the streets, the whispers grew louder. Some said his empire was crumbling, others swore it was only growing stronger under pressure. But nobody could ignore the elephant in the room. Von's ghost wasn't going anywhere. The legal side of things only got worse. Reports surfaced of prosecutors expanding their case, adding layers of investigation into Durk's finances and business dealings. Anonymous sources inside the court claimed there was pressure from above to dig deeper, to use the chaos as justification for new angles of attack. Suddenly, what had been a single battle for freedom turned into a war on multiple fronts. And Asian Doll? She didn't let up. A week after the courtroom stunt, she dropped a freestyle on Instagram, laced with lines clearly aimed at Durk. One bar allegedly said, "Tears in court don't wash away sins. You can't hide the truth when the ghost walks in." It was the kind of line designed to sting, and sting it did. Clips went viral, fan pages crowned her the queen of truth, and even rival rappers jumped in to co-sign the message. For Durk, silence wasn't helping. Every second he stayed quiet made it look like she was winning the narrative. But the fallout wasn't just between them. The streets started choosing sides. Hashtags like #JusticeForVon clashed with #StandWithDurk. Old beefs reignited. Rivalries got fresh fuel, and the culture itself split into factions. For some, Von's memory demanded accountability, no matter how painful. For others, Durk's loyalty over the years outweighed one courtroom breakdown. But the divide grew deeper, louder, and uglier with every passing day. The government probe escalated too. Tabloids claimed investigators had uncovered irregularities in contracts tied to Von's unreleased music. Was Durk pocketing more than his share? Were royalties mishandled? The documents were never verified, but in scandal culture, verification isn't required. The accusation alone was enough to make headlines, to plant seeds of doubt that grew faster than any defense could chop them down. And then came the bombshell nobody saw coming. Leaked audio. A mysterious clip surfaced online, allegedly of Von's voice, recorded before his death. In it, he supposedly says, "If I'm gone, don't let Durk play you. He only loyal to the money." Authentic or fabricated? Impossible to tell. But the clip spread like wildfire, and by the time experts chimed in to question its legitimacy, it was too late. The narrative had already shifted. To the public, It felt like Von himself had spoken from beyond the grave, and his message wasn't flattering. Durk's team scrambled, issuing statements, denying involvement, calling the leaks manufactured lies. But the damage was done. When you're up against ghosts, perception, and viral culture, facts don't stand a chance. The final blow, however, came from within. An alleged insider from OTF whispered to blogs that the camp was divided. Some members wanted to double down, fight back, and protect Durk at all costs. Others whispered about betrayal, about cracks in loyalty, about too many secrets finally catching up. Whether true or not, the image of OTF United was shattered, and the whispers of implosion became impossible to ignore. Asian Doll, for her part, doubled down on her cryptic performance. Another Instagram live, another tease. I ain't even started yet. The truth gonna shake the world. She didn't need to say more. Every vague hint, every smirk, every half sentence kept the world hooked. She had turned grief into a weapon, a spotlight, and a storyline too juicy for anyone to turn away from. And so, the aftermath wasn't just legal or financial, it was cultural. A scandal that blurred the line between courtroom and stage, between justice and entertainment. A scandal that dragged Lil Durk to his knees, lifted Asian Doll into the spotlight, and resurrected King Von as the ghost haunting every headline. By the time the dust settled, one thing was clear: this wasn't over. It couldn't be. Not when reputations were at stake, not when millions were on the line, and not when a single whispered name, Von, still had the power to collapse an empire. The real trial wasn't happening in a courtroom. It was happening in the streets, online, in the culture itself. And the verdict? Still undecided. Because in the end, the question wasn't whether Durk was guilty or innocent, whether Asian Doll was loyal or manipulative, whether Von's legacy was being honored or exploited. The real question was, when ghosts refuse to rest, who's left standing when the lights go out? And as the cameras clicked, the hashtags trended, and the world waited for the next shocking twist. One truth became undeniable. This story was bigger than any verdict, any sentence, any case. This was legacy warfare, and the ghosts were winning. So, ladies and gentlemen, after all this chaos, after the tears in court, after Asian Doll's shocking entrance, after King Von's name echoed louder than the judge's gavel, one question refuses to die. What's the truth? Did Asian Doll really come armed with receipts? Or was it all performance for the spotlight? Did Durk break down out of guilt? Or was it simply the weight of a ghost too heavy to carry? And most importantly, if Von himself could speak, would his story match the whispers we've all heard? Or would it silence them forever? Think about it. Every rumor, every leak, every alleged text message has only deepened the mystery instead of solving it. Asian Doll walks out with a smirk, Durk collapses in tears, and Von's legacy remains caught in the crossfire of loyalty, betrayal, and fame. Was this justice, or was it theater dressed up as justice? The line has blurred so badly that nobody can tell the difference anymore. But here's the reality. The streets are still watching, the industry is still whispering, and the ghost of Von isn't resting anytime soon. The fallout from this moment is far from over. There will be more leaks, more twists, more betrayals waiting in the shadows. And when they come, you better believe we'll be right here, breaking it down piece by piece, exposing what others are too scared to touch. Now I want to hear from you. Was Asian Doll brave or manipulative? Did Durk collapse because of guilt or grief? And whose legacy truly wins in this war? Durk's empire, Asian Doll's spotlight, or Von's eternal ghost? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is just getting started. And don't forget, like this video, share it with everyone who needs to know the truth, and smash that subscribe button so you never miss the next scandal we uncover. Because this is where secrets explode before your eyes.